would you like to talk a little bit about your interaction today, this week with the White Mamba for our listeners? Give them a little bit of
That
update
was fun.
on what was that like?
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. For those of you who don't know, Brian Scalabrine was a professional basketball player in the United States, and he joined the Boston Celtics at a time when they were when they were huge in the nation. They had their second renaissance, as it were, possibly the third. Actually, the third. They struggled for a dynasty. They almost made it, but they did get one championship in this third sort of halcyon era. And he was part of that squad, I believe. And he was wildly popular, both for his persona and for the fact that he was white, with red hair. It's just kind of rare. There's people call it racism, and in a way, perhaps it is. But there's a lot of Boston Celtics fans who remember Bob Cousy. They remember Larry Bird. They remember these white giants of the game. And it's there's something. I'm not calling it racism, but there is this nostalgia for when white players could hang and bang on those vaunted parquet floors. But Scalabrine is he calls him, his nickname is the White Mamba, and he played during that vaunted Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce era where it was just fuck yeah, we were serious contenders against Kobe Bryant's Lakers
Yeah,
and
you
beat
really
them.
know your
And
basketball.
but no, I watched at that time because I loved Ray Allen. I loved Paul Pierce. Kevin Garnett, I didn't know, but when Garnett joined, Garnett is just this fucking just he's a unitary force. Like he's a natural captain. I mean, the man inspires respect. He's got good acting. I saw him in Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler,
Yeah.
and he's a good actor too. Like he's a very talented guy. Loved Ray Allen. Loved his calm, surgical. Just his 3-pointers, very silky. And how can you not love Paul Pierce as a Bostonian? Paul Pierce is a soldier. Paul Pierce stuck through with the Celtics through very, very hard times. And he finally got his ring in 2008 with the new dream team, as it were, of Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and some would include Rajon Rondo, who was very troubled mentally, but he was very, very gifted as an athlete, very smart player too. But apparently he had a big mouth on him, and his career suffered for it. But and I believe Scalabrine was either on the 2008 squad, but he was certainly on the squad in 2009 that lost to the Lakers in Game 7 with like 2 seconds to go. It was heartbreaking for any basketball fan in Boston, the Boston area. Anyway, despite these long years I'm getting into, I'll try to speed it up. We did a video with Brian Scalabrine yesterday for Tamarack Wine and Spirits. For Scalabrine is I'm not sure who came up with the concept. It may have been him, but there's a vodka lemonade with cold pressed lemons that's just hit the market a little while ago. It's only in a very few places, and I happen to work at one of those places where it is. Has nothing to do with me. It was already there when I got there. But we carry it, and we got a chance to do a video with him by virtue of the fact that, and I believe this is the reason why we have his product in the first place. Scalabrine's neighbor and his daughter's basketball friend's father is a gentleman named Rick. And Rick enjoyed the videos that I was doing for Tamarack. So he suggested to Scalabrine that we come up with an idea together.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I was behind the camera because I wanted to make sure that, it got shot well. I didn't want just static,
Right.
back and forth shots. I wanted, listen to me talking like I fucking know what I'm doing.
Brett the auteur.
Yes.
Hoovra. You're gonna get a Hoovra going over here. I got my Hoovra going.
Right,
Listen to you talking about
right.
Big Mamba over there.
Well, but it was fun. It was fun. He came in. He came. It's interesting being around people who have been famous and are famous. It's very interesting being around them because, of course, he had been involved in promotions like this for, he's not shy in front of a camera. He's been filmed, um, and it's just like he just sort of took charge. We just went with the idea that he was playing somebody obnoxious,
Mm.
and his idea was to make it a Hollywood person, an LA person.
Right.
So he had all of his entourage, dressed bougie, as it were, and
The
we just
selfies.
like
The
it was
selfies.
beautiful. It was great,
Yeah.
and it was wonderful thing about working with him too is that even though I'm a bug compared to him and his life, the life that he's led, if I had a suggestion that worked, he's like, yeah, do it, do it
Oh,
on three.
cool.
I'm like, all right,
Right.
yeah, it was great, and it was so fast. We managed to shoot all that footage in almost exactly an hour. And we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. I wrote a script. He tossed it out. He didn't like it, or he didn't feel he could do it. He didn't feel
Uh-huh.
he could do an English accent. I suggested an English or a French accent, and but his idea was to make it L.A. Hollywood, and I'm like, okay, we
Which
did
is
it
where
that
he's
way.
from. He's California.
Is he from L.A.? I
He's
didn't
from
know that.
California, at the very least. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I kept trying to insert different bits of silliness in there, and I
Mm.
managed to get one thing where Rick, the neighbor who introduced us, as it were, got us all going. He throws his coffee cup at the trash can rather than put it in there. I'm like, it's a silly touch. There are a few other things but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Is
And
that your
actually,
camera?
the videos,
1 hour, huh?
well,
That's it. That's it.
yeah,
You put
one
that
hour.
together really fast. Like even the
We
editing, like
filmed
it was up. Boom.
No, we filmed it in an hour. It took
Mm.
me another hour to edit it.
Yeah.
But the real stickler came with they didn't want, obviously for legal reasons, they didn't want licensed music in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we had to find unlicensed music, and of course, unlicensed music is not. It's the quality's mixed, so we had to find some unlicensed. And actually, his head of social media uh, did it. She found some licensed music that worked. I found one. She found one. It worked.
Good
So
for
by
you,
3
bud.
o'clock, it was
I
good.
hope more of
It
this
was
stuff
really good.
happens. It turned out really well. Really funny. He seems like a good guy to like do something like
He's a
that.
great dude.
Yeah.
Dude, what I loved about him is that it's great being around decisive people.
Mm.
It's great being around like decisive but not cruel. I think that's the difference. Because he would just outright. He was the director, really. He was the director. I just had the concept and I had the camera. But he's been around cameras, so he might even have an interest in film himself. I'm not sure. But he's like, all right, Brett, give me an over the shoulder shot. Give me an over the shoulder shot. Make sure these guys are in the frame. All right, you got it.
Oh
Boom.
wow.
Let me see it. Let me see it. Let me see it. Let me see it. Perfect. Perfect. Or I don't like it. Let's do it again. No, and he'd say, but it wasn't cruel. It
Right.
wasn't cruel. You'd say to one of the other actors, one of the other people, you're too slow. It's got to follow right on. He's like, no, that was my bad. That was my bad. Let's shoot it again. That was my bad. I'll speed it up.
Right.
It was one of those moments. It was one of those like I didn't get to know him really at all. It was just like bang, 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 bang. Let's brainstorm for a second. It was interesting to be around somebody who, and this is a kind of hackneyed American jargon, but who can make things happen. It's like without being cruel, without being hurtful, without you're not giving me what I want. It was nothing like that. It was just no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Let's try it. Or then he'd be like, beautiful, beautiful, and and that was it. It was interesting. I learned a lot. He's the most famous person I've ever met. and you start to realize that there's a correlation between fame and personality. There's something there. He didn't
Mm,
inherit what he got. He rose up to the very top of his game, of his profession, the very top. Yeah, it's yeah, he wasn't. I don't believe he ever started for the Celtics, and he didn't just play for the Celtics. He played for a few other teams too. I
yeah,
believe he played for the Nets.
Chicago.
But he made it to the absolute top of a very tough profession.
Mhm. The
Very
older I
tough.
get, the more respect I have for these athletes. Like they
Absolutely.
just became athletes. They could have done anything. Like
Yeah.
it's to become that good at something is incredibly impressive, and that's why they're so good at other things. PK
Mhm.
Subban is one of my favorite hockey players just because of his personality. And
Mhm.
he's a fantastic podcaster. He just started a podcast. Fantastic. Fantastic on TV. Fantastic. Like it just to be like Wayne Gretzky, the Canada's God. Canada's Jesus Christ, Wayne Gretzky. He could have been a professional baseball player. He could have been a professional basketball player. He was like
Sure.
no, but he just chose hockey. He was actually like supposed to be drafted for baseball, I think. And he's like, "No, I'll just go and be the greatest hockey player of all time." That's it.
That's what a lot of people don't understand too. Is you have to choose. You have to
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah.
There's just not enough time.
Mm.
There's not enough time. You hear about savants and who are like who can excel at different
Yeah.
professions that don't seem to have a lot in common, but they're rare. It's very hard. It's very hard to get to Gretzky's level, to get to Michael Jordan's level,
Mm. It's like
to to
mhm.
to get to Tom Brady's level. You really can't do much else. You really
Yeah.
can't do much else. With Michael Jordan, it was a whole Kobe. It was a whole. I'm sure with Scalabrini too. It's this whole. I like you're even when you're off, you're on.
Mhm.
It's what you do. You
It
have
takes
almost
every
this sessional.
you have to like consider the food you put into your body all the time
You
because
have to
it's
consider, have to
like
consider where
it's
your food
everything.
comes.
You have
You
to
have to
like
consider
schedule your
how you work,
sleep.
how you sleep,
Mm.
how often you practice. Michael Jordan apparently would not weight train during the regular season. He apparently would stretch. That's all he
Mm.
do, stretch. Then you contrast that with Dennis Rodman, greatest rebounder in NBA history, one of its greatest players of all time.
Love
Rodman
that
would get
man.
drunk.
Uh-huh.
Rodman would get fucking drunk in Vegas in the middle
Of the
of a
playoffs.
championship series. In
Yeah.
the He'd get fucking drunk in Vegas with rock stars,
Mhm.
get on a private jet, fucking, you know, Phil Jackson have to come find.
Why didn't people
But
make
it's so
a bigger
different
deal of
about
the fact
this.
that he was the first queer athlete, like openly queer athlete? Like I don't think that was ever
Mm.
made big enough. I think they just kind of said he's weird.
At the time, yeah, queer was weird. Queer in the '90s was weird. You were weird. You were
Uh-huh.
not. Queer didn't mean gay. If it did, it was only in the most underground of uses.
Queer
I
doesn't
don't
even really
recall
mean.
queer gay. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't recall hearing the word queer applied to alternative sexualities, if you will,
Uh-huh.
until I was in college in '01, '02, '03, like around that time, which would have
Queer
been
studies.
five or
Yeah.
6 years after. Well, no, Rodman became nationally famous for his antics as well as for his uh, achievements, probably in the mid '90s.
Yeah. Marrying
So
Carmen Electra, swapping outfits.
yeah, dyeing his hair,
Yeah.
dressing like a woman sometimes, you know. Um, you know, it, but there's different. It's just get choosing. That's the tough thing.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing and investing yourself, believing in yourself. It's so hard.
Uh,
It's
which
so
is
hard. And I
which is
admire
actually a
people.
really good segue into our story. I think actually.
Oh man, it's almost like we've done this before, isn't it?
It's almost
It's
like
awesome.
we have. But before we do that, I wanted to get into some business here first, a little bit of business. I'd like to thank Sarthak Sharma again for his suggestion of the Great Gatsby. He came back with another one. He wants us to do One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by King Casey, which is also a really good
Never read
suggestion.
that. Fun.
No, no.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, so follow us, like us, rate us. Some bastard gave us a review of a 1 star on
That's
on. I gotta hunt him down
if
and
you
kill him.
if you have opinions, you're gonna piss people off. It's okay. It's fine. Plus,
So
we're not. Plus, we're not fucking Walter Cronkite and
no,
Edward R. Murrow. Neither are we Joe Rogan or Charlie Rose. I mean,
yeah,
we're still getting to know this ourselves.
yeah. So
A
shall
one
we?
star deserved. Who knows? But we're
Maybe.
certainly striving too. That kind
Well,
of
that's
thing.
all we can do, right? Keep trying.
Yeah.
So shall we pose?
Sure. Oh God. Oh, we don't wear masks. Is that what we got to start?
Maybe.
Make a point.
Starting off this week, boozing through it. Fuck it up.
All right, let's go. Woo.
I think I might have looked like a Manson family reject right there. I'm not sure.
Wow.
My lung.
To be rejected by the Manson family.
I don't know. Either meant I was too extreme or not extreme enough. Who knows? You be the judge.
So my spiel is here. You ready?
Here it is.
It's hard enough. God damn it, my dog. I swear. I
It's
got a
okay.
pot.
Folks, this is a homespun podcast. This is
Yeah,
frustrating.
don't be confused by all those pixels you see in my camera. This is what is it? Like a garage shop show here. Now, it's hard to write a story about an unlikable character. But to write a story centered around a character with no identity must be a terribly difficult task. In today's offering from the glossy pages of the Metropolitan magazine, we have a story about a 29-year-old woman named Gita, who is no one, and goes through life making decisions as if crossing a river by jumping from one rock to the next, with no other option than taking the rock before her. It's a shitty analogy, but it's all I can think about as I type this during the typhoon, so just let me have it. When the story opens, Gita's an au pair to a British expat family in India, which is interesting because an au pair means a foreign worker. But she's Indian. In India. At this party, she catches the eye. Oh, I didn't even mention it was at a party. And the story opens on a party at the expat's house. And at this party, she catches the eye of a much older Indian man sitting in the corner. They marry, eventually, of no volition of her own, and they live together. The only thing she seems to slightly yearn for is to be left alone, and not in an angry, door-slamming way, but in a more of a, wouldn't that be nice kind of way. Eventually, Shrikantha, I can't pronounce his name, I'm sorry everyone, the husband suggests she have a kid. That might keep her more busy than happy, and she says yes. She can't have children, so they adopt. And this is when the story really starts. When you have an 8-year-old who may be unlikable, but sure is a character who is thrust into the story. She is Rainey's. That's not how it is. She and Rainey are foils. One, Gita, orphaned by death. The other, Rainey, orphaned in name only, as she still has parents, just ripped asunder from them by poverty and someone trying to make a buck. This is when the story really begins. On this episode of Boozin', a breeze picked up, bringing the smell of grilled chicken from the hotel next door, and she felt a quick pang of hunger for meat. You Are My Dear Friend by Madhuri Vijay. What'd you think of the story?
Yeah. I loved it. I really did. I loved. So an idea occurred to me about halfway through reading it the first time, that India's cultural legacy is enormous. It's dense, it's Byzantine, and it's presented. It has to be presented even to school children across the country in the most condensed form, because the study takes several lifetimes with any kind of alacrity. But one story that's actually probably perhaps universal to anyone in Indian schools, or even to dumb whiteys like us beyond her august borders, is a story of the Buddha.
Right.
His specifically as it relates to this story, how he essentially learned what the world was when he left his cloister, when he left his father's palace, um, and what what he did with that knowledge thereafter. But it's an interesting way to frame this story. You are my dear friend. When Gita is like Siddhartha was 29 when she left her cloister. Actually, she was in several cloisters. Her family is described as encasing her in love before they died. She describes living in the hot courtyard of the convent that took her in after her parents died, and of course, her life is very comfortable and regular when she works for the Bakers, this expat family that actually treats her rather well. They treat her with some. They can't help but patronize her, it would seem, because they are, as you say, referring to an Indian woman in her own country as a foreign worker. But they give her a lovely room with very comfortable pillows. They don't care what she does when she's not working. They don't try to control her life outside of when they expect her to take care of their children. So that's a very regular cloistered sort of life. And of course, she's cloistered inside her husband's giant house. She sits in the courtyard. I mean, she's literally the only time we ever really see her before the adopted child arrives is in the courtyard. So why did Siddhartha leave? Well, it's just there's a certain one telling of the story is that there's only so many there's only so long that you can live without yearning for something else. That this yearn to be in the world somehow could be a universal human trait. Whether you have a different dancing girl each night entertain you with the most sumptuous spreads in the evening, as Siddhartha apparently enjoyed in his day, or if you have all your animal needs provided for by your employers who don't make too much of a demand on you, as in the case of Gita, where you have love, your parents loved you. It's the sorrow of having lost them, which is never really described. Gita is not necessarily described as sorrowful in the story about her parents' death. We're supposed to supply that ourselves. One thing is that it seems that growing up in a convent was very boring. It seems like it's very like she can't think of the sister's Bible, giant briefcase-sized Bible, or the sister at the convent, without feeling back in that boring, somnolent, hot courtyard again of the convent where she was raised. But again, she's bored, right? She marries this much older man, can't have kids. Here's the thing: they adopt a psychopath, and that's like you said in your beautiful précis. That's where the story really begins. And so you want to be in this world. You want to have, as Srikanth puts it to his wife, you want to have a child. Okay. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. She's leaving the gates of the palace. She doesn't have, Chana. She doesn't have. Chana could explain these things to Siddhartha. What's that? What's happening to that man over there? Oh, that's sickness. That man is sick. What is that? What happens to people when they're sick? Oh, they may recover, but a lot of them die. What's death? Oh, we encounter death later on. she doesn't have anyone to explain what's happening to her, right? So
Mm.
life, you invite life in. You want to have a child. Well, sometimes children are psychopaths. Sometimes they come in and they stab you. Sometimes they come in and they demand jewelry. Sometimes they come in and they lie. These are very different works of art, of course, but this short story and The Dark Knight, the movie, have something in common. You can't trust a single thing the Joker says. Nothing he says is true, or maybe all of it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. You want to know how he got these scars? You never really know how he got those scars. You just know that something is revealed about his psychology in each story he makes up. With her, she describes men, strangers surrounding her house in the jungle where she grew up.
Mm-hmm.
She describes her father naked, happy with his food. She describes her birth mother fell into a deep place and tried to drag her down after her. You don't know if it's as true or not. And if it's true, what kind of reality is it really describing? Her father may be a communist in the woods, a
Mm-hmm.
Maoist terrorizing the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a
Of
very, but here's the
the
point.
adopted daughter, just to be clear.
Adopted daughter. Right. Here's the point is that when you go out into life, when you leave home, as it were, when you leave, this is what may happen. Life may look right back at you with the pitiless eyes of a predator. It's astonishing. It's a wonderful way to. I think the creation of the daughter, the adopted daughter, as a manipulative psychopath with a million different smiles, each one of them she can employ at will to try to get her way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting way to show how naive Gita really is, and how vulnerable she is, you know, in this predatory sort of
Mm-hmm.
hellscape of Bangalore that we see in this novel, in this short story. What'd you think of it?
I mean, obviously, I didn't know that story. I don't know the story of the Buddha. I didn't have that going into this, unfortunately.
I'm not
You know.
saying it was a conscious. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
Well,
But I was
there is
just
a.
struck by the same age when they left their cloister, 29. I was just
That I
struck
did
by
not
that.
know that.
Like, oh, this kind of makes sense.
Uh.
This kind of makes sense. But again, because Buddha had one home, or Siddhartha, before he became the Buddha, had one home. She had four
Uh-huh.
before they adopted Rani. But the element of her being encased in love, her being in a courtyard, her being cared for, I think that's kind of describes the encapsulated nature of Siddhartha's early naive years.
Well,
But
as
anyway,
you
whatever. Maybe I'm making much of it. I interrupted you too, by the way.
no,
Sorry.
as you could tell from my little spiel, I was fixated on the fact that I felt she like her lack of identity, her lack of desires, her lack of choice making,
Right.
decisions. You know, like
Right.
she doesn't decide to get married. He asks her, like she says yes, she agrees to all these things, but she doesn't really, she doesn't pursue anything, and I thought that was quite interesting until she meets the child. Really, like even when she doesn't, we have no inkling that she wants a child in the piece until the husband, they're in bed and he's like, oh, you want a child, don't you? And she's like, yes. And then they have one. That's it. They go out and get one. It's it's interesting how much, like, she's an au pair. She's given a, like, even her husband calls her that. She's got a French title, right? Which means a foreign caregiver. And then she's brought up in a Christian school by nuns. Like, her husband wins the lottery. And I'm not familiar with the lottery, but a lot of these aspects are not her native culture after she loses her family. And I think
Right.
that has a lot to do with the fact that she doesn't have an identity, really. It's a lot of stuff that's put upon her. She doesn't choose to be Christian. She is forced to be Christian because of the, like, where she goes to school. You know, and then she makes her husband to be Christian, or sort of. He kind of falls asleep during the hymns. It's
He's just such a middle-aged man. It's wonderful. Like when he's done making love, he falls on top of her. He just plops down on top. Like he falls asleep during mass.
Mhm.
He falls asleep when he gets home. He comes home. All he wants to do is just have food waiting for him. He gets pissed off. There's no food.
I
And there's
worry
no
that
dinner.
a part of my problem reading these books or these short stories is I don't know how you read. I read to make my, like, literally, I read to go, okay, how can this story make me be a better writer? That's how I read
Mm,
all the time. I'm
mm,
constantly trying to read to steal. And so when I'm reading this, I'm going through it through that kind of, like, I don't know how to stop it. I don't even know if I read for pleasure anymore. I think I read just to become a better writer. And
mm.
and I'm reading this story, and the thing that I was struck by from the first part of it is how quickly we gloss over so many things. Like, I missed being in a moment in this story until the child comes into play. I feel like it's a lot of exposition. That's where the story started for me. That's where I really got into it. And the other parts of it, I just felt like we didn't live in any moment. It just hopped, hop, 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 hop. And maybe that's effective. Maybe that's part of it. But I I wish I got out of it what you did. My favorite part of the story is that line when she's at one point, like, they can't parent this child. They don't know how to. And
Right.
the father goes, okay, if you can't, who's a dick? But that actually might be a cultural thing with how Indian men are. I'm not sure. But he's like, this is your child. I've already had mine.
Competent. It's a man thing. It's just a man thing. I'm competent. And never men don't want to appear incompetent,
Mm.
especially in matters of matters relating to themselves. I mean, this is also this is his house. This is his wife. This is his
Right.
adopted daughter. As little as he wants to do with her,
That was
nonetheless,
what
it
I was
reflects
talking about.
on-
Yeah. No, that's what I was talking about, was the attitude of, like, well, I've had my daughter, this is your daughter, that I thought was odd. And I didn't mean to sound racist. I just think there's a lot in this story that is cultural that I do not get. But when the father packs her bags for Rani and tells her to leave, and she leaves, and then the father takes off after her.
Yeah.
Like, she's coming
That's
back.
scary.
She's coming back. Fuck, and bolts out after because she
What's
doesn't come back.
amazing, what I thought was I thought the author Madhuri
Mhm.
Vijay's characterization of him was a little stilted. I thought it was at first. I'm like, okay, we have the tow-headed little blonde girls in the beginning. We have the drunk, overbearing English woman in the. I'm like, all right, we have the patriarchal, frog-looking, tired-looking, puffy, middle-aged man. I'm like, are we going to stop with the crudely drawn stereotypes?
Right.
But I felt that ended, and that stereotype is one thing we absolutely have to mention before we stop.
That's a good point.
But one thing I thought that was very interesting was that a stereotypical dumb middle-aged fossil, right, would have socked his wife in the face if she had suggested in his moment of weakness that he was a bad father, which she did.
Yeah, she does.
Gita says, quote, in her normal voice, "You don't know where your daughter is, do you?" When
Her other
Rani
daughter.
is,
Yeah.
when she's been completely undermined, his foolish attempt to appear competent has failed. He's naked in his failure. He's watching his adopted daughter disappear into the crowds.
Mhm.
And then his wife turns to him and says in her quote normal voice, "You don't know where your daughter is, do you?" And he's like, "Oh shit!" And he
See,
runs after because he
uh-huh.
wants to make up. In a way, he wants to make up for the shitty fathering he did. Like it's very. He would have a man who would have fit that type would have batted her right in the head. Would have hit
Mhm.
her.
And it's
He
a great
didn't.
moment. It's a great moment in the piece, right? Because that's like, and then she's alone, right? Like that's the moment that Gita is alone in the story. And the quote, the line that I picked was, "She got the pang of wanting chicken." They're vegetarians,
Yeah.
right? At least he is because of her. And that is a moment where she has this like desire, this want. And it's the first
Sure.
real time in the piece that I can think of where there is a desire from her, other like a want for something.
Well, this is the thing. If you survive your encounter with the world, no matter how terrible,
Uh-huh.
if the world reveals itself to you, and after you invite it in,
Mm-hmm.
if you invite the world in, and you look it in the eye, and you survive, you grow. It's your education. This is what
Mm-hmm.
suddenly smells delicious. Suddenly, when they finally kick Ronnie out, suddenly she occupies her body with greater confidence. Gita
She
does.
does. Yeah.
Use of her small stature, she walks with her shoulders back. You know, she feels like she understands
Mm-hmm.
herself a bit better. That enigmatic personage at the very, very, very end of the story who reminds her a little bit of Rani. Just this, what does she call it? Insolently sexual, like indolent and sexual about her. I'm trying to remember. Like
Uh-huh.
there's this young girl, like she's
Yeah.
probably
So
late teens, early 20s. She still has pimples because the makeup is covering her pimples. She has her hair tied in a very intricate style
mm-hmm.
that you can't understand, and she has this hauteur that she's occupying her space in a way that Gita finds magnetic, but at least Gita knows that she finds it magnetic. She circles around this young girl to be around her energy. She's
she
been
work
touched.
she's a worker
She's
at the local like cosmetic counter at the local shop.
yeah. I'm sorry I didn't lay that groundwork, but yeah, that's what she's just she's a makeup salesman
Mm-hmm.
salesperson at the cosmetic shop in the department store that's been built on land that once belonged to her and her husband that
Uh-huh.
they sold off, and they're allowed to go in even though they don't live in the place, whatever. Uh, but my point is that Rani, in some way, comes from out there, as it were, this terrifying uh, little girl, like this person who has the power to subvert everything you believe in effortlessly, and you're supposed to, as her mother, adopted mother, she's supposed to be grateful for your love
Mm-hmm.
and all these things that Gita took for granted. Well, I'm going to be her mother. She's going to love the room I picked out for her.
Yeah. She's gonna
Oh,
want to sit in this chair and stare at a tree.
want
Yeah.
to gorgeous the way I do. And she's like, "No, you're rich. You have jewelry. You can give it to my real mother." Calls Shrikant, an 8-year-old girl, mind you, calls her adopted father an old cocksucking bastard. So
Yeah.
you can only imagine. You don't need to know exactly how she grew up to know how she grew up. It's one of those things. But here's the thing about stereotypes, real quick. So this this short story is loaded with them. Even as it tries to subvert these stereotypes, the story is loaded with stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
The drunken finger snapping foreigners who who treat Indian people like little babies that they have to put in put in these. They have to make a room for the Indians. Don't know how to make a room for themselves, so they have to buy pillows and cloths and stuff. The tow-headed children, the racist parties, the dinner parties, the grumpy patriarchal middle-aged man who marries for sex, the casually racist orphanage people, the stigma against tribal people, which apparently Rani is. And interestingly enough, Odisha, the province that Gita comes from, there's a lot of tribal Indians who live in there too. The Adivashis, I believe they're called it. Anyway, but it's like this little girl really is this terrifying stereotype, like the other from the backwoods, who's going to steal from you and stab you and conspire with street strangers, which she does. Apparently, she does talk to somebody off the street.
She brought in like a mangy pup, right? Like she's got like hair that's all mangled, and she
growls.
She's frightening. She's a frightening little character.
Terrifying. There's no depth to her.
So, did you not like? Are you against the stereotypes then?
No, I think it's remarkable that it happened. I think that it's remarkably subversive. It's like, and here's the thing, it's ambiguous too, as well. So they don't know how to raise, like you pointed out earlier, Gita and her older husband. They don't know how to raise her. So the question is, could she ever have been raised? Is she actually a psychopath, or is she just very hurt by something, and there's a way to kind of love her and guide her in such a way where she could actually become socialized? We don't ever get to know that because they kick her the fuck out.
See, that bothered me. That bothered me as a parent. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's supposed. She was fucking stolen from her parents, right? Like
stolen from her parents. We don't know anything about her parents. We have no reliable knowledge that they're even. The only thing we know is that they're alive. The narrative doesn't seem to challenge the fact that they're alive. But everything else, part of it is supplied by this old racist with a coal miner's cough who works at the orphanage. And part of the knowledge is supplied by Rani herself, who seems about as, if somebody had a gun to my head and said, "Bitch, Rani, psychopath or just very hurt," I'd say psychopath. Like I don't think I've read a more terrifying depiction of a child in literature.
It's the smiles. It's the smiles.
Oh my God. That's how you know Madhuri Vijay is an excellent writer. Just which she is. This one piece is any bit of evidence. Those fucking smiles, the way. Dear listeners, you have to read the story just for Rani. Just for this omen-like depiction of a child, and it's not frivolous. It actually serves a narrative purpose, as we've discussed. This idea, of getting what you wish for, or something like along those lines. But I'm just interested that the story did not. The story did not subvert stereotypes, but then it did. It does at times. It's and I would need more time to develop this idea. But when Srikanth actually runs after Rani after his wife had just said, you don't know how to fucking raise kids, basically. Like, you failed too. And he's like, oh my, and there's this moment where he must have been like, oh my God, I did. And he runs after, tries to bring her back. He's like, then he goes back to being this, sex ogre. And after he's done banging his much younger wife, it's like, we can't take care of her anymore. So it's like,
if that's because that's what we are too, right? We're all kind of fulfill our stereotypes, except for when we don't.
Yeah.
There's something. the thing that we didn't talk about is "You Are My Dear Friend."
What does that even mean? Yeah,
It's
and it's
the,
given,
the
it's
other au
uttered
pair.
by the other. Well, actually, no, she wasn't an open. She was like
No,
a chamber. The lower.
yeah,
She was lower down on the hierarchy of servants.
yeah. That's
She
who
has no
it's.
name. She has no fucking name.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that she wasn't named. The fucking bakers even had a name. The father who says one line, we know his first and last name.
I don't remember his first name, but yeah, they're not
Charlie
actual
Baker.
bakers. They're Mr. and Mrs. Bakers. They're the expats.
Sorry, yeah.
No, 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 no. I had to read it that way because it says the Bakers, and it's the first line in the book. I'm like, oh, are they bakers, or are they? No, you find out that they're not bakers. They are the bakers. Yeah, I thought we would talk about that more, but is it a fitting title then?
I don't even know what it means. I don't
Yeah,
know
me
what it
neither.
means. This story, I really
Uh,
don't. It just looks like a plot device. Like Gita gets stabbed
mhm.
after after this nameless servant who received a fatuous like you are my dear friend. Even Gita was worried that, oh, is this because Gita, remember, was guilty
Mhm.
that she had her morning freedoms. So she tried to mollify, and there's no evidence that the nameless servant woman actually
Mhm.
harbored these resentments. It's just in Gita's mind. So she gives her this, as she confesses to Rani later after she gets stabbed by the girl. It's a piece of trash. It's worthless. It's not jewelry.
Uh, it's a
This
pendant that
piece of
says
trash.
"You are my dear friend" on it that she gives
Right.
to the
This
person out of.
pendant.
Mhm.
This pendant purchased cheaply in a market that is valueless, that with this fatuous overblown statement, what the whole story is named after. There's got to be something there to that. There's got to be
Mhm.
something there. And I like how you pointed out at the very beginning that, how do we enjoy a story where the character is really unlikable?
Mhm.
Gita is yes, unlikable. I agree, but in the same way that kind of we all can be. I don't. What's amazing to me, what I really enjoyed by the end, is that there really seems to be a marginally greater sense of self-awareness on her part.
Yeah,
I like
it's
that.
there's transformation in this piece. There truly
She
is.
wants to be a transformation, right? She wants to be Rani in a
Mhm.
very reductionist sense. She wants to walk in and take the fuck over, I think, which is what
Mhm.
Rani did. And which she attributes this kind of seductive uh, uh, presence. This
Mhm. That's fascinating. Yeah,
this
because in the house, right?
how does she, how does she describe the young woman at the end as exposed?
Mhm.
She's exposed, and people like Gita circle around her. Wow,
Mhm.
she wants to be Rani
Yeah.
in a way.
Like in
But
her
what does
own
that
house, she wants to
in
sleep
her own house?
in like not Ronnie. Gita wants to sleep in a small room that's like a cupboard. No, not a cupboard. Like a for lack of a
Mm,
better term at the moment, shed. Not
mhm.
in our house, and not even like in the master bedroom. Well, Rani takes over. She becomes
Takes
the
everything.
president in the house that she'd never been in before. So next
She calls
week,
her.
oh yeah,
It's a hell of a good. It's a really good read. It's a
mm,
mystery. I still don't understand it. I probably have to read it again,
mm.
but it's well done. It's really well done.
So
Yeah.
next week on Boozum, we're going to be looking at Heirlooms by Brian with a Y, Washington. That'll be interesting. That's the one we're up to
Ooh.
next. Yeah, and that's been our show. I'm Daryl. He's Brett. Together, we comprise the Boozing Team. And until next time, keep scribbling. What
The
you laughing
booze
at?
and tea. I like that. What you laughing at?